Diogo Dalot pulls the ball back across. Garnacho! That is outstanding! A spectacular goal from Alejandro Garnacho!
Welcome back, football fans. It looked like Manchester United had finally found their next superstar. A teenager with fearless pace, tricks sharp enough to cut defenders in half, and a swagger that reminded fans of legends who once ruled Old Trafford. Alejandro Garnacho wasn't just a name, he was a headline waiting to be written. But here's the twist. The same story that began with fireworks started to unravel far sooner than anyone expected. The goals dried up, the confidence looked shaken, and suddenly, the boy who was supposed to carry United's future was struggling to hold on to his present. What really happened here? Was it the pressure of the shirt, a clash with the manager, or something deeper, something inside Garnacho himself? Stay with us, because in this story, every chapter reveals a new piece of the puzzle, and the ending may not be what you think. Before the bright lights of Old Trafford, before the headlines and the pressure, Alejandro Garnacho was just another kid chasing a ball through the narrow streets of Madrid. No crowds, no cameras, just raw hunger, scraped knees, and endless hours of dribbling past whoever dared to stop him. Every alleyway, every park, every uneven patch of concrete became a classroom, teaching him lessons that no academy could replicate. He learned balance, improvisation, and most importantly, how to play with freedom. The kind of freedom that doesn't fit neatly into a coaching manual. He wasn't born into football royalty. No one had his name written down as the next prodigy. Scouts weren't circling his weekend games the way they did with other Spanish prospects, and for a long time, he remained the boy who didn't quite fit the mold. Too daring, too unpredictable, too wild for academies built on structure and order. While other kids mastered set plays and rigid drills, Garnacho thrived in chaos. He learned to invent moves, to challenge defenders in ways that seemed reckless to some, but in those moments, there was genius. Talent has a way of breaking through the cracks though. Eventually, Atletico Madrid's academy took notice, drawn not by consistency, but by flashes of brilliance too bright to ignore. They saw the audacity in his dribbles, the confidence in his first touch, and the way he seemed to anticipate defenders' movements almost instinctively. He wasn't polished, far from it, but there was electricity in his play. And in football, electricity is contagious. Bigger clubs don't just watch, they lean in, measuring not only what the player is, but what he could become. That's when Manchester United came calling. They didn't just see a winger, they saw a spark. A raw, untamed spark that could light up Old Trafford for years to come. For a teenager, this was no small decision. Leaving home, family, friends, and the familiar streets of Madrid to cross borders for a dream in England, where the league is merciless and the spotlight unforgiving, was a gamble few at his age could stomach. Yet Garnacho believed in the journey. He packed more than clothes, he carried ambition, determination, and the silent promise to himself that he would make every step count. It was destiny knocking, but destiny, as often happens in football, is rarely patient or kind. Every wonder kid has that one night, the defining moment when whispers become roars, when the unknown kid becomes a name on every fan's lips. For Alejandro Garnacho, that night came swathed in Manchester red. It wasn't just the goals, though they were unforgettable. It was the way he played, without fear, without hesitation, as if the weight of expectation didn't exist. The ball seemed glued to his boots, defenders frozen, caught in anticipation of moves they couldn't predict. He wasn't merely surviving under the pressure of Old Trafford, he was flourishing in it. Commentators called it the birth of a star. Headlines placed him alongside legends, the kind of company reserved for players who don't just participate in matches but define them. Fans glimpsed the future, a teenage winger who could carry the spirit of United's greats into a new era, and Garnacho leaned into it. His confidence wasn't arrogance, it was belief. The swagger, the audacious celebrations, the willingness to attempt the impossible, it all radiated promise. For a fan base starving for hope, Alejandro Garnacho became more than a player. He was a symbol, a living reminder that brilliance could arrive when least expected, but symbols carry weight, and when the weight grows heavier than a teenager's shoulders can bear, even the brightest sparks flicker. While everyone celebrated the rise, it also marked the start of expectations no one should place on a teenager. The Premier League doesn't simply create stars, it manufactures hype. And after Garnacho's breakout, the hype machine accelerated with relentless intensity. Every run, every dribble, every moment of flair was clipped, shared, and replayed endlessly across social media. Suddenly, Alejandro Garnacho wasn't just Manchester United's new sensation, he was football's next obsession, and the world's eyes were fixed firmly on him, waiting to see whether he would rise or falter. Fans compared him to Cristiano Ronaldo. Pundits talked about him as the jewel of Manchester United's rebuild. His face adorned posters in bedrooms across Europe, his name chanted in stadiums, and his goals replayed endlessly on highlight reels worldwide. And let's be honest, he fed the hype too. The tattoos, the signature celebrations, the undeniable confidence in every interview, it all became part of the persona. Garnacho wasn't just playing football, he was living the story of a superstar in the making, embodying a narrative that millions wanted to believe. And with that came the weight of expectation. When the world labels you the next big thing, every touch is magnified, every mistake dissected. For a teenager, that's more than pressure. It's a storm that rages every week, in every stadium, on every screen. The hype train climbs fast in football, and the higher it goes, the more catastrophic the fall can be when things stop going perfectly. Because football doesn't travel in straight lines. One season, you're the shining future of the club. The player fans circle in calendars and anticipate in every kickoff. The next season, the same fans question whether you belong. And for Garnacho, those cracks were about to show, quietly at first, before they began to widen into something unmistakable. Initially, it was easy to dismiss. A missed chance here, a sloppy touch there. After all, even the elite have off nights, but with Garnacho, those off nights started stacking up like storm clouds. The boy who once seemed untouchable, who played with reckless confidence as if no defender could shake him, suddenly looked hesitant. His trademark fearlessness, the stepovers, the direct runs, the audacious attacks remained, but the end product faltered. Shots veered wide, easy chances slipped through his boots like sand through fingers. Matches passed where his name barely registered in highlights or commentary. For someone who had exploded onto the Premier League scene, this wasn't a minor dip. It was a warning signal, flashing red. Whispers grew louder in the stadiums, in the press, and across social media. Was he losing his edge? Was the tactical system misaligned with his style? Or had defenders finally adapted, figuring out the rhythm of his game? Each ineffective match added fuel to the fire, and in Manchester, criticism doesn't creep in quietly. It crashes down like a relentless tide. The real turning point arrived not with a missed shot, but with missed opportunities to even appear on the pitch. Dropped from critical matchday squads, left watching from the bench, Garnacho faced something far deeper than temporary setbacks. Tactical rotations, managerial trust, and evolving standards of expectation began to question whether he belonged among the club's rising stars. That's when fans began murmuring the question nobody wanted to vocalize. Had Garnacho peaked too soon? Had the meteoric rise burned out faster than anyone anticipated? But here's the thing, this wasn't collapse. It was the early tremor before the real quake. The underlying challenges, the pressures, the internal battles were only beginning to surface. For any young winger, confidence is oxygen, and for Garnacho, that oxygen began to thin. Match after match, the story repeated. He'd outpace defenders, find space, even arrive in perfect scoring positions, only to be undone by the smallest misstep. Statistics told a brutal story. Chances created but left unfinished. Shots on target but no goals. Analysts noted his conversion rate had plummeted to one of the lowest among Premier League forwards that season. For fans, it was baffling. For Garnacho, it was suffocating. Because here's the reality. Missing a single chance can be shrugged off. Missing 5? That's when doubt begins its insidious work. And doubt, more than any defender or tactical nuance, became Garnacho's fiercest opponent, suddenly, instinct was replaced by overthinking. Confidence was replaced by hesitation, and at this level, hesitation is fatal. What had once been a sparkling, fearless approach now teetered on the edge of uncertainty, and every fan, every pundit, every replayed highlight seemed to underline one truth. The bright spark that had ignited Old Trafford was flickering, and no one yet knew if it could be reignited. The fans who once gasped with excitement now groaned with frustration. The same clips that had gone viral for moments of brilliance were now circulating for mistakes. Garnacho wasn't the hero of highlight reels anymore. He had become the headline for all the wrong reasons. And while the goals had dried up, something else was starting to crack. And this time, it wasn't about talent, it was about trust. Football isn't just about skill, it's about fit. And while Garnacho's raw pace, audacious dribbling, and ability to improvise made him a nightmare for defenders in open space, the system around him began to feel like a cage. The very qualities that once made him untouchable now seemed ill-suited to the structure he was being asked to operate within. Under his new manager, wide forwards weren't simply encouraged to take defenders on and create chaos. They were instructed to tuck in, press intelligently, link up in controlled sequences, and time their runs with surgical precision. For seasoned professionals, such discipline could elevate a team. For Garnacho, whose instinct was to attack first, improvise second, it felt like a straitjacket. Every run he wanted to make, every step that had previously unsettled defenders, now carried the implicit threat of tactical error. The numbers told the story with cold clarity. His touches in dangerous zones dropped dramatically. His dribbles were cut in half. Opportunities that once seemed to materialize naturally now vanished before he could exploit them. Instead of isolating defenders one-on-one, he often found himself stuck between the lines, waiting for passes that never arrived, or attempting movements that the system penalized rather than rewarded. The very spark that had electrified Old Trafford was being muted, silenced by an environment that prized control over instinct. And then came the most telling sign. Garnacho started disappearing from the big matches. Not because of injury, not because of poor form in training, but because the manager didn't see him as the right piece for the tactical puzzle. For a player once heralded as the future of Manchester United, that was a brutal reality check, a reminder that raw talent alone doesn't guarantee a place in a team defined by structure and strategy. But here's the pressing question. Was it the system failing Garnacho, or was Garnacho failing to evolve with the system? Either way, the cost was the same. His place in the squad, his minutes on the pitch, and his confidence all began to erode simultaneously. And when confidence slips, pressure fills the vacuum. At Manchester United, pressure isn't a side effect, it's the air you breathe. Every game is broadcast to millions, every misstep dissected, every dip in form transformed into a headline. For a 19-year-old like Garnacho, that spotlight wasn't merely bright, it was blinding, a heat that burns through the skin and into the psyche. The fans who once sang his name now demanded more. Why isn't he scoring? Why isn't he starting? Social media, once overflowing with clips of his dazzling dribbles, now flooded with montages of missed chances and critiques of his work rate. In the span of a few months, Alejandro Garnacho had transformed in public perception from golden boy to scapegoat. The media, always hungry for drama, amplified the narrative. Pundits questioned his discipline. Journalists hinted at tension with his manager. Transfer rumors swirled, painting him as expendable rather than untouchable. And for a young player still carving out his identity in the professional game, that kind of noise cuts deeper than any defender's tackle, any sliding challenge, any mistimed interception. Pressure can do one of two things. It can forge you into steel, or it can crush you entirely. Garnacho remained somewhere in between. On some days, he looked like the fearless, electrifying kid from Madrid, bursting down the wing with swagger and audacity. On others, the weight of expectation dragged him down, shoulders slumping, body language screaming the story of a player drowning under a badge heavier than he had ever carried before. It was a fight for identity, a fight for belonging, and a fight for belief. And it wasn't just on the pitch, it was inside him. In the quiet moments between matches, in the locker room, in the empty stadiums after a tough result, And the cruel part, at Manchester United, there's no hiding. The theatre of dreams can turn into the theatre of nightmares overnight. One week, the roar of the crowd lifts you to legendary heights. The next, every misstep is amplified, every failure dissected under relentless scrutiny. There is no buffer, no forgiving shadows. Every sprint, every dribble, every misplaced pass is under a lens sharper than any defender's tackle. But here's the thing, pressure wasn't the only battle Garnacho had to fight. There was something deeper he needed to confront. Something internal, something far more personal than the stadium lights or media headlines. Confidence isn't a switch you flip, it's a fragile ecosystem that can crumble when doubt takes root. And for a teenager thrust into a maelstrom of expectation, that ecosystem had been shaken to its core. Every story of collapse carries within it the seeds of reinvention. And for Alejandro Garnacho, that chapter was only beginning. The goals had dried up, the hype had shifted, the system seemed to clip his wings at every opportunity, yet the raw talent, the agility, the instinct, the electric fearlessness remained. It hadn't vanished. It was buried under missed chances, tactical frustration, and the crushing weight of expectation, waiting to be unearthed. Garnacho began working differently. Hours stretched longer into the evening. Finishing drills became relentless exercises in precision, not just power. He studied decision-making, replaying moments before and after each missed shot, each misread run. Video sessions weren't just about replaying goals. They were about dissecting patterns, weaknesses, and split-second choices. It wasn't just practice, it was methodical analysis, a recalibration of instincts that had once been untethered. And slowly, there were small signs of life. A sudden assist that opened a match, a clever run that split the defense and reminded fans why they had cheered so loudly for him. A goal in a cup match that flashed a brief return of that old magic. The spark was still there, but now it had to be refined, not just unleashed. Raw energy could excite, but refined execution could endure. Redemption, though, isn't instant. It is earned in seconds, one decision at a time, on pitches watched by millions who remember every previous mistake. Every appearance became a test for Garnacho. Would he seize the moment, or would the ghosts of missed chances and tactical misfits dictate his actions? Each dribble, each pass, each shot carried weight far beyond the ball itself. For Manchester United fans, the question was clear. Can this young prodigy evolve into the player they were promised, or would he be remembered as another brilliant spark that fizzled too soon? Because in football, potential is never enough. Adaptation is survival, and survival is a story only time can write. Alejandro Garnacho's journey isn't just about goals or assists. It is about the weight of expectation, about the fragile line separating prodigy from superstar. It's about a teenager navigating a storm few adults could withstand. Talent can open doors, but mindset, adaptability, and resilience determine how far you go once the doors swing open. His highs remind us why we fall in love with football, the thrill of raw potential realized. His struggles remind us that the journey is never straight, that the system, the spotlight, and human doubt can all conspire against brilliance. And here's the suspenseful truth. This story isn't over. Garnacho is still learning, still evolving, still chasing the player he is meant to become. In years to come, we may see a legend in the making, or a cautionary tale of expectation colliding with reality. But for now, the chapter remains open. Fans watch, pundits analyze, and Garnacho himself continues to fight, one touch, one dribble, one goal at a time. The lingering question, will he rise to define a new era, or will the promise that once lit up Old Trafford flicker out too soon? Alejandro Garnacho's journey is far from a simple story of a rising star. It is a portrait of talent under fire, of expectations that can crush as easily as they elevate. From dazzling debuts to missed chances, tactical misfits, and the unforgiving glare of fans and media, his path has been anything but linear. But here's the truth. Football isn't just about flawless performances. It's about resilience, adaptation, and the courage to keep running when the world seems to have written you off. Garnacho's story reminds us that every young player faces moments where the dream feels fragile, and that the measure of greatness often lies in how they respond, not just in the goals they score. So here's the question for you, the fans who've cheered, groaned, and debated over every match. Will Alejandro Garnacho rise from this storm to cement his place among the legends, or will he become a footnote in the saga of lost potential? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What do you see for Garnacho's future? And if you want to stay on top of every twist and turn in football's most compelling stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Because in football, as in life, the next chapter is always just a heartbeat away.